Hello there, and welcome to Fire Engineering Blog Talk Radio and this installment of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, the podcast dedicated to our great volunteer fire service and getting all of our listeners to embrace the message that developing, displaying, and maintaining a professional image and reputation are the duty and responsibility of all firefighters, and recognizing that true professionalism is not defined by any paycheck. Tom Merrill here. So glad to have you joining in. Thanks again, as always, to Chief Bobby Halton and all the others in my fire engineering family for the opportunity to being able to bring you this podcast, and also for all the other great fire engineering podcasts, and also for allowing me and my colleagues to talk about our great fire service and focus on important and timely topics. I hope you're all doing well as we are close to closing out 2022 and the holiday season is upon us. I hope your year has been a productive year. I hope you got a lot accomplished within your hometown volunteer fire department, and I hope you also have plans to accomplish even more in the upcoming year. I had quite a busy year myself. I hit the road quite often, taking my professional volunteer message near and far. I was in Collegedale, Tennessee just a few weeks ago at the Tri-Community Volunteer Fire Department. I had a great visit there with so many like-minded firefighters. I just got back from the VCOS Symposium in the Sun Conference in Clearwater, Florida. That's the Volunteer and Combination Officers section of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. They put on an incredible conference. We also successfully dodged a hurricane. It actually got downgraded to a tropical storm when it came through, and we were calling it Symposium in the Rain and Symposium in the Dark because we lost power for a little bit, but you know what? It was still an unbelievable conference with a ton of great attendees from all over the country. The conference actually sold out, There was maybe 600 people, I think they said, and I want to thank Chief John Buckman and all the others on the staff at the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the Volunteer and Combination Officers section for the invitation to attend and for putting on such a wonderful conference, too. I mean, incredible. They never missed a beat either as they dealt with the storm and some travel issues and cancellations with some of the presenters, and a power outage hit for a bit. Right as the conference was kicking off, keynote address, Dave Dennison's delivering the keynote address, and boom, power goes out. But he killed it. He did such a great job. Things really went well considering all things that had to be dealt with. And I know anyone that was there is going to tell you the same thing. They improvised, they adapted, and they overcame and anything that was thrown at them. Just an incredible conference with incredible people. And again, 2022 has just been a great year. I've been fortunate to be out meeting so many great professional firefighters who share this passion that you and I have for this great fire service that we are blessed to be part of. And this year, I've been at conferences in Missouri, in New York, in Louisiana, in Tennessee, North Dakota, Indiana, Florida, among other places. I've met firefighters who have come from near and far to attend the conferences, and I dare say firefighters from all 50 states were at these conferences. And it led me to realize again, and it's something I've been truly harping on lately, and if you've been listening, you know what I'm going to say. Folks, in today's mean-spirited and sometimes really ugly world, there's still a lot of great people in it, and very often they're wearing the Maltese cross. And as professionals, we should recognize and understand that, and we should endeavor to maintain that wonderful reputation that's enjoyed within our ranks. The world is nasty enough. Don't let it spill over into our fire service world. Let us continue to be the good guys and the good girls and be the example and the ones the public can still look at with respect and admiration and trust. Focus on that, please, as we round out the year and start heading into 2023. And if it's 2023, if that's approaching, then you know FDIC is right around the corner, right? The great FDIC conference again in Indianapolis in April, from April 24th to the 29th. I hope to see you there. I'll be doing a classroom session. That's an hour and 45-minute professional volunteer fire department presentation, and I'd love the opportunity to meet you and see you there so we can talk about what it means to be a professional volunteer firefighter serving in a professional volunteer fire department. I hope you can make plans to attend, because you will not be disappointed in any of the classroom offerings or hot training, and you'll get to network and meet so many peers from near and far. At that conference, I'm really hoping to be releasing my book, The Professional Volunteer Fire Department. We're on the finishing touches now. We're still hoping for it to premiere at FDIC, so I'm really hoping we can achieve that goal and get it out at that conference. And I really hope you can make it. I really do want you to experience that great FDIC experience, because there truly is nothing else like it. And you will leave re-energized, reinvigorated, and more fired up, whatever you want to call it. You will definitely leave Indianapolis better motivated, better educated, and more fired up to come home and do a great job. It's been a great year for my department as well. We've been talking all year about recruitment and retention efforts. My department has a membership committee, a recruitment and retention committee, and they've been working so hard on trying to come up with ideas to bring more members through our door. And they were recently recognized by New York State. The Department of Health from New York State Bureau of EMS rewarded our recruitment and retention members with an Innovation of the Year award at a recent conference. And we are just so proud of our committee for everything they've done to bring in new members and to consider new ideas and work really hard. And it was so good to see them get recognized for the hard work that they've put forth, not just in 2022, but as we're going to talk about, throughout the past several years as well. As you probably know, we spent a lot of time this year really concentrating on recruitment and retention. And we discussed a lot of ideas about reinventing the volunteer fire service, and I've invited a lot of people onto the show this year to discuss what they're doing back in their hometown volunteer department to both recruit and retain members. Back in February, we had Jerry Knapp on. He talked about the New York State task force that he's working with to look at all aspects of the volunteer fire departments. It's in New York State, and they have quite an emphasis on recruitment and retention. They put a task force together focusing on that, and his committee is focusing on a lot of key areas in that realm. And he came onto the show and he talked about what's being done in New York with this task force, and he offered a lot of ideas that hopefully can improve recruitment and retention for all of us in the volunteer fire service. So even though it was a New York-based committee, it really had a lot to offer volunteer firefighters from all over. After that, we had Chief Dan Krasinski on. He was from the East Franklin, New Jersey Volunteer Fire Department. He talked about improving morale and building a cohesive volunteer fire department operation, which we know is so important in the retention efforts. And we also talked about their duty shift program that they have there in New Jersey, in East Franklin. That was the first one I was exposed to, and that was back in 2018 when I traveled there to do a presentation, and he reviewed their duty shift program with me. And then I hosted my great friends from the Limerick, Pennsylvania Fire Department. I was there last year when they hosted the Pennsylvania State Firefighters Association convention. And not only were they incredible hosts, but I was immediately, the minute I walked through those firehouse doors, I was immediately struck with the level of both professionalism, but also pride that just resonated through their ranks. And as I went through the firehouse and I talked to their members, I was so impressed as to how into it they all were. This department, Limerick Fire Department, has a very strong membership too. So I had them on the show to talk about what they're doing to both recruit, but also to engage and motivate their members and also keep their members. And it was so great to have their chief on, Ken Schuler, their president, Tom Walters, their vice president, Scott Miles. And this is a department also, folks, they went through a merger several years ago. They merged with another department. Two departments with very rich and proud histories that formed one department out of that. And they were so proud of how they did that and what they accomplished. So we had them on to talk about that as well. Over the summer, I had Chief John Buckman on. He discussed a new book that is totally directed at the volunteer fire service that he just put out. It's what I've learned so far leading and managing volunteers. I mean, Chief Buckman, it doesn't get any bigger than him. He's had a very successful career as a volunteer fire chief, and his book is packed with a ton of advice, and it should be on any professional volunteer's bookshelf. I mean, the chief can back it up, too. He served as a volunteer fire chief for 35 years in Evansville, Indiana, and he's been involved in the fire service for about 52 years now, and he's a chief that gets it. I mean, he's still so involved, too. And matter of fact, he was even awarded the Chief of the Year back in the 1990s by the Fire Chief magazine, and just a good book. And I saw the chief just recently down at the VCOS conference, the Volunteer and Combination Officer section of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. They just had their conference down in Florida. The chief is a big part of that. It was so great to catch up with him. But anyway, a lot of shows this year devoted to the recruitment and retention topic. And if you haven't listened to them yet, please, by all means, go back, give them a listen. A lot of great ideas were discussed. Some things that work, some things that even didn't work. But it's good to know, right? Because as professionals, why be afraid to try something new and not be afraid to say, hey, it didn't work, so let's turn the page and try something else. So they're all there to listen to. They're on my website, theprofessionalvolunteerfiredepartment.com. You can find them on my YouTube channel, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, where they're all archived. They're all in chronological order. And, of course, they're also on the fire engineering site, blogtalkradio.com/fire engineering podcast. I'll tell you what, just Google Fire Engineering Blog Talk Radio, and they'll all come up. All the great podcasts that Fire Engineering sponsors, and you can find them right there. So on this podcast this year, on so many, when discussing recruitment and retention with my guests, I mentioned several times a new program that my department implemented at the beginning of 2022. It's brand new for us, and we call it our duty shift program, or sometimes our hours-based program. And I've received a lot of phone calls and emails from listeners who were interested in finding out more information about this program. And for sure, I have mentioned the duty shift program, and it has brought a lot of inquiries from around the country. But it's important to note that this was born out of a much larger effort, a larger project focusing on overall topics of recruitment and retention. The hours program is just one facet of a much larger effort and project that our in-house firehouse committee took on. So I thought it'd be a good idea to bring on a few of our members who serve on our recruitment and retention committee, and we're the ones who helped design and launch our hours program. Again, just one component of our overall recruitment and retention efforts. And I am pleased to welcome these members onto the show this evening. And matter of fact, in the 8-year run of this show so far, I believe this marks the first time I've had Snyder guests on a regular episode. I've had Commissioner Paul Griebner, Chief Tim Oliver on some special episodes that we aired from FDIC in the past, but this marks the first time for a regular episode, and I'm excited to welcome some of my sisters and brothers on the podcast this evening. So joining us this evening is our First Assistant Chief Brent Hudson, our Secretary Trish Hudson, our Captain Zach Polvino, and our past Chief of Department and current Safety Officer John Files. Thank you all so much for being here with me this evening. I appreciate it. Past Chief Files, I was wondering if we could start with you, if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about the Snyder Fire Department, how big it is, how many calls we go on, what kind of a membership we have.
Sure. The Snyder Fire Department is a 100% volunteer fire department, and we cover approximately 9 to 10 square miles within the town of Amherst. The town of Amherst is a first-ring suburb of the city of Buffalo. We currently have 70 members. We staff 3 engines, a tower ladder, heavy rescue, 2 light rescues, and 3 chief's vehicles. And we respond to about 1,100 to 1,200 calls per year.
Very good. And how long have you been a member here now? Just a couple years, right?
Yes.
Chief Files brings a wealth of experience to within our ranks, and he's been a longtime member of the department and served as chief for many, many years. Trish Hudson is our secretary. How many years, Trish, do you have involved in Snyder now?
Well, I guess it's been about 10 years, over 20.
10 years, over 20.
So I joined in 2000. I left when our kids were very young. Actually, we kind of talk about that. If we had had a program like this, duty shift program with the flexibility it provides, I probably would have never left, but I did. It was the right choice for our family. and came back a few years back, so I've got about 10 years total.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Chief Hudson, how many years, sir?
It'll be 24 years.
24 years, and you're serving currently as our first assistant chief.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, and Captain Polvino,
Yes.
how many years do you have now in our great Snyder Fire Department?
So similar to Trish, I left for a little bit, so I have 15 years of service over the past 17.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show and talking about this important subject. So let's take a step back and give our listeners a little background about what led to the creation of this new program. And to be sure, it's bigger than just a new program. It's a piece of the puzzle, right? That as department leaders recognize, more needed to be done to attract and recruit and also retain volunteer members. So Chief Hudson, if I could start with you, can you walk us through the early stages? Like, what got you involved in this? What brought you together to start this process of, hey, let's focus on recruitment and retention?
I think it started out facing the same challenges that a lot of volunteer companies face across the country. Member engagement, getting people to drills, getting people on calls, short staffing, but also one of the challenges is keeping some of our younger members who wanted to stay in Snyder, but it's difficult to find houses here. It's a high demand area, so that's another challenge. One of the good and bad things about living with somebody who's who's also in the firehouse is you kick a lot of ideas around. So it grew from a number of conversations about a number of different things, all surrounding recruit, retention, engagement. How are we going to do this? And I had recently become 9-2, the second assistant chief, and I'm thinking down the road to what is the department going to look like in 5-10 years, or how are we going to leave it when I'm finished? And it grew from there. We started thinking about different steps we could take, who we could approach, where we could go. Trish and I, one of the first person that we went to was Captain Polvino. Zach is very involved in a lot of things, especially with our social media, our publicity. He also is very in tune to what's going on in the firehouse. So he was a great person to start bouncing ideas off of. The three of us started meeting regularly, a couple of times a week, and then once we really got going, we backed that off to once a week. But we really took a look at what are the immediate challenges and what are challenges that we would need to resolve now in order to resolve further challenges down the road.
And that's excellent. One thing I think I remember reading or you guys telling me about too was you were challenged obviously at the beginning stages of meeting because of COVID and all. So I believe you're a big believer in video meetings, right? We used to, we all think back to the volunteer fire department meeting. We all run to the firehouse. We have to meet at the firehouse. But one thing COVID introduced us to was the benefit of having video meetings. So did you do a lot of video meetings as well?
Almost 100% of them.
Yeah.
We had a few that we could meet in person, but really it was very easy. And that's one of the things that Trish and Zach both put together with the whole Google Suite program and allowing the department to do things like this. It made it easy, and I'll have to leave it to them to discuss. But it was easy to use. It wasn't so easy to get it going. But through their efforts and some others, but they were really the drivers of that. Through their efforts, that gave us the tools that we could do. Not only that, but a lot of the things that we currently do for that program, especially with information dissemination, talking to a lot of the other companies, tracking our documents and keeping the things that we need, especially when it comes to duty shift.
Excellent. And if the listeners haven't figured it out yet, I've neglected to say, and I didn't know if it would be okay, but obviously Trish Hudson is married to our assistant chief, Brent Hudson. So we have a husband and wife team here. That's why they were bouncing ideas off each other and in the early stages of this. And Trish, I know you're a big believer, and maybe it stems from your corporate job, your paid job, so to say, engaging members' opinions. So you guys initiated some membership surveys to kind of gauge the mood of the organization and talk about things we could do better or maybe improve on. So what was the thinking behind that?
Well, we actually started talking about surveys in 2019, and then, as everybody knows, in early 2020, we all got sidetracked with COVID. So everything was about COVID response, COVID SOGs, but when that started settling down a little bit and we fell into a pattern of response with that in the summer of 2020, and this was after past Chief Files was brought into the committee as well, we executed 2 surveys with our membership just to kind of gauge where everybody was on a whole list of topics. And really what we found is some themes that came out of those surveys. People were really looking for more communication, internal communication. So like Brent said, we applied for and received the Google for Nonprofits suite of products in 2020. We rolled out email, we rolled out video conferencing, Google Drive, Google Docs, things like that almost everybody uses, but now we have it. So people were looking for more communication, and people were looking for really ways to kind of have that work-life balance. And we see it all the time in corporate America. Work-life balance is a hot topic, but we were looking at it here, and it was probably the first time we've ever really looked at it, and that kind of went hand in hand with some of the other programs we rolled out.
It's funny you mentioned that work-life balance. I took some dispatch training last week. Again, my career job is as a fire dispatcher. I was able to go to some training last week, and one thing that was pointed out by the presenter was 73% of new employees entering the workforce today will leave after 3 years or so. Mm-hmm. And the majority of workers entering the workforce today put a high priority on work-life balance. So I think that spills over into the volunteer fire service world as well, and it's something we need to recognize. And as an older member of the organization, you can't fall back on, well, when I was young and had kids, we just made it work. We've got to identify ways to make it work better for this new generation joining today.
It's really about the changing face of the volunteer fire service, and we have to adapt to that. And that's what we are seeing. We can't go back to, and that's one of the things that came out in the survey, that people were tired of, this is the way we've always done it. So that mentality, we were trying to get around that. So we do have to adapt and change for today's generations.
Absolutely. And I'm going to sidetrack here for a second, if you wouldn't mind, Trish or Brent, because or Zach, you guys were the ones really involved with the Google Not-for-Profits. Can you maybe explain that a little bit to our listeners and how it might benefit them if they're not currently utilizing something like that?
Yeah, Google has a nice, and there's a lot of tech companies that have opportunities for nonprofits. We chose Google because it's a platform that most of our members were already using or familiar with. Microsoft has some discounted platforms for volunteer companies or nonprofits, but we are a 501c3, and that's the important part of this. You can get a lot of the benefits if you're a 501c3 nonprofit, and that's really all we had to do was apply for it, show our 501c3 status, and then we received the benefit of the Google suite of products, and with that came enterprise email, which was one of those things, it's really great because we can use our domain on the Google suite. So it's just like Gmail, but it's at snyderfd.com. And so every member, all of our committees, all of our different groups, officers, whatever it might be, we can have email distribution lists for them. And that's come in really handy. And Zach, I don't know if you want to throw in anything else on that.
I think with the email side of things, coming from also from a corporate world, right? Everything that gets sent out from a work environment, it comes out in a standard manner with an email, at xcompany.com. And I think the fact that all of our communications externally going out to prospective new members or to other organizations when we were inquiring about their programs, by us having our own email system, Gmail, powered system, it allowed us to step up our game a little bit and polish ourselves up a little bit. That way I also didn't have to worry about mixing in my fire department email with, the meeting invites my wife sends me for, girls' nights and whatever. So it was kind of, keep things separate and keep things from spilling over. But plus, like Trish said, as well as Chief Hudson, all the different version controls that we put in place when we were writing the document, or having a shared space in the cloud, being able to kick a document back and forth. And if I was up at 11 o'clock at night editing something, the edits were saved right into this cloud. Trish and Brent and John could view it. They could see what I put in. I could see what they put in. That allowed us to collaborate a lot more, I think, effectively.
How easy or hard is it for a company to get set up with something like that? Is it just a process of applications, or where do you start in case somebody wanted to start?
I think it's actually pretty easy. We Zach and I talked a lot about it and decided, really, like I said before, the easiest platform for our users to adopt would be Google, because it was familiar and most people were using it. So we really just researched it. We went through that application process. It only took a couple of weeks for Google to approve us, because you have the required documentation as a 501c3. And then we put a plan in place to roll it out to the company. So we didn't just, go. We literally had to put a plan in place. We had to train some people on how to use Gmail. So we switched everybody over.
Hey, it happens, right? We have a broad
So-
makeup of membership like every
Yep.
volunteer department.
So we wanted to make sure we weren't just throwing it at people. Zach and I sat up here for a couple of Friday afternoons,
Yep.
and people could come up for like open office hours.
I think it helps too that in addition to Chief Hudson, Trish and I both have background in project management, project experience, and some technical projects. So for us to be able to put together kind of a plan of, this is how we're going to roll it out, this is what we need. We need people trained. We need people to understand the admin side, identify access groups, who's going to be an admin, who's going to be just a regular member of the system, getting everybody logged in, and then being able to troubleshoot on the fly as things go. No implementation runs completely smooth,
Right.
But being able to kind of put some people around it, it helped smoothen the whole thing, and I think it transitioned well. I think at least from the officers, the captains and lieutenants, we use it quite frequently to go back and forth with drill plans and sending out our agendas for a drill. That way, we're all in the same loop, or I've got, my other instructors aligned with what we want to do. And I think it makes it nice, again, that everything is combined to, one email versus being spread across, a bunch of different,
Right.
Trying to remember, everybody's individual email address.
And this all leads to the main heading here of communication. I believe in your discussion as a group, you were determined to stay in good communication with the department on your ideas. I mean, whether it's rolling out the Google or just your recruitment ideas and things like that. So it was so important, I believe you call it, to maintain internal and external communication. Is that right?
That's right.
We knew that the success of anything that we come up with is going to be the buy-in of everybody involved. It winds up being their program, and we worked as hard as we could, and fortunately had great cooperation. The membership in general, the fire officers, the executive side, the district, and the commissioners of the district. Everybody worked, and because it was such a change, or we felt it was such a change, but we saw the change and it going, everybody seemed to kind of grasp it and understand that, all right, things are changing a little bit. It is a new way of doing everything, but people knew what was going on, and that was important to us.
So informally got together, started saying, hey, we got to do more for our membership or recruiting members. We got to do more to keep members. We got to do a better job communicating with their members. You start having these meetings, forming these, getting these ideas put together, launching these platforms to better communicate with the members, launching these platforms for getting feedback from the members. Now it's time to mesh it together and come up with a strategy and total recruitment and retention effort, which there's a lot of different nuances to that, and I know one of them is community involvement. Getting in front of the community, letting them know we're 100% volunteer, letting them know that we have other membership opportunities here. And Zach is our publicity chairperson. He's done a great job with it. Why don't you talk a little bit about everything you do to get our name out there? Because we can never have our name out there enough, right?
No, you're right. So one of the things that we found kind of informally that was a little bit shocking was doing some driver training over the summers and talking to the residents, talking to parents of little kids that want to run through the hose lines as we're spraying water, was that the idea that they didn't know we were volunteer. So we were kind of relying on this idea that everybody knew we were volunteer. I think it's kind of also interesting that all of us on this committee, none of us grew up in Snyder, or lived or Snyder native, I guess, right? We all come from different areas, and kind of came and gravitated towards the fire department for one reason or another. So trying to find that within the community, but also trying to emphasize the fact that we are volunteer, led to kind of re-imaging some of the ideas that we presented on social media. So on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, putting out some YouTube videos, trying to put a face to the fire department, so it wasn't just a brick building with glass doors and shiny red trucks, but there was some people you recognize from the community, right? You go to church, you go to Coach Little League with these people, right? You see them in the shopping mall or supermarket wearing the Snyder hat or Snyder T-shirt, kind of understanding that what it takes, right, as a community. But I think the biggest thing was trying to A, reemphasize the message that we are volunteer, but then B, emphasize the message that we're always recruiting, and that it's once we got the duty shift rolling, then it was able to emphasize there's multiple ways that you can be a member, right? You can provide that service through the on-call membership if that works, or you can provide it through the duty shift membership if that's something that you're looking for. So I think it was a stepped, tiered, approach, starting with understanding that, the community has to know we're volunteer, and we have to still be presentable and professional in how we operate. But we show up, we do our job, but that we still are always looking for people, and we're always looking to get new people into the door.
And Chief Files, I know the social media presence is one part of that community engagement, but the Snyder Fire Department's been very actively involved in going out and intermingling with the community and also bringing the community up to the firehouse to get to meet the firefighters as well. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of our outreach programs that go beyond the social media program and really get us out there in the community.
Sure. We've always had a very strong educational presentation to schools, especially during Fire Prevention Week, but that actually has expanded. We're seeing more schools and more daycare centers coming into the fire station, and also us traveling to them throughout the year. In fact, at the current time, one chief, that's one of his primary responsibilities is the public outreach, public education. We also tried a couple different options to have kind of an open door policy, if you will. We always see people coming by our station doors, they're glass, and they're always looking at the apparatus. And now when people are in the station, or the days that we have the special events, the doors are open. People are encouraged and welcome to come in. It's their fire department. It's a good opportunity to interact. And again, as Captain Palvino brought up, we suffer from a bit of our own success. People assume that you're a career department because things look good, people do their job, and getting the message out that no, well, we are professional from delivery of services, but we're volunteer. We need a constant influx of newer, younger members, and it just seems like that has given us some energy. And even if the person that's coming into the fire station isn't going to be joining up that day, you never know where your message is going to go. And we've gotten some nice references from friends and family that have talked other places because they have visited us, and actually kind of spurred the interest of people to join.
Right, and I know the department has, in addition to the school programs, you guys have launched some other incredible initiatives. Coffee with a firefighter, truck or treat. What's the thought process there, Trish? What kind of ideas did the committee discuss? And talk a little bit about what you did there.
We were really just looking for, again, those opportunities. Every engagement we have with the community is a recruitment opportunity for us. So it's kind of two-part, education and recruitment. Selfishly, we want to recruit new members. So we started looking for at least one kind of community activity every quarter at least. And so we looked at the Recruit NY, is that in April?
Yeah.
So we did the Recruit NY event. We did Coffee with a Firefighter event where we would have our front doors open. We would have coffee and donuts out. People could walk up and have a chat with us, get a tour. We've actually recruited 1 or 2 members through those events, through that event specifically. We do have summer events that we pair up with the town of Amherst. What was the
food truck rodeo.
What the heck's a food truck rodeo, Zach?
Food truck rodeo. It was awesome. So the town put together a bunch of the food trucks in the area. They went to one of the parks in our district, set up so you come in, residents would come in, pay for whatever their whatever kind of food truck they're looking for. We use it as an opportunity to bring down an engine, set up, hand out the fire prevention goodies, the plastic kids hats, the bags with kind of our stuff. One of the big things that we didn't talk about was we started one of the very first projects I think our committee worked on was a 5x7 handout card. We saw the value in producing 2,500, 3,000 of them. And 2-sided card with our logo, our simple message. Lawn signs too. That went hand in hand with that and the community engagement. One of the things going back to that was trying to tell people in our own neighborhoods that we're volunteers. So we got 18 by 24, made up 18 by 24 vinyl lawn signs with stakes. People encouraged our members to take one, put it in their lawn. We kind of jokingly said that like with Brent and Trish, the chief truck was the greatest recruitment tool because it's always parked in the driveway. But for those for some of us who are buying our first homes, neighbors don't know what we do and why why we run out at 3 a.m. and jump in a truck and.
Right. Yeah, neighbors were looking at where's he going? What did the lawn sign and handout? What were they all about? What did the cards say? What the lawn?
So, real simple message. Just that I think. Trying to remember it. I wrote it, and I'm trying to remember. Join the Snyder Fire Department. 100% volunteer. The back of we use the same graphic for the front of the card as we did on the lawn sign, and then on the back of the card we put some contact information specifically for Chief Hudson, and I think with the phone number, email, and a way of contacting website, our social media sites, and it was just a way that when we were talking to somebody, so if we went out to do driver training. And if hose line's off and we're flowing water and we're talking to the parents of the little kids running through the water spraying, and they mentioned something about us being volunteer, we could hand them a card, and it was like, hey, you know what? Maybe now is not the perfect opportunity for you, but think about us in the future. Think about us, when you're looking for something else to do, something to get involved with. So the card turned into a valuable thing. So being able to hand it out at events such as the Coffee with a Firefighter, the Recruit New York, our regular fire prevention open house, our chicken dinner. We did a fundraising chicken dinner, being able to hand out a card with every chicken dinner sold.
So every time someone came and purchased their chicken dinner, they
got a card.
They got a card with their meal that said Snyder Fire Department's looking for members.
Right.
Here's how you can get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So the bottom line here is we can't hide behind closed doors. We have to get out, interact with our communities, engage with our communities, show a professional level of behavior. I say it in my presentation that you want to recruit people, be professional, because who's going to want to join an organization that looks like it's run amok, correct? Keep our ship in order, portray a professional image. Also, it's important that when you hand out this swag, the helmets, the badges, the coloring books, whatever you want to give out, if at all possible, get your name on it. Brand yourself and get your department's name and maybe website or contact information on it so people know who they can reach out to. And also, Trish had mentioned Recruit New York. I just want our listeners to know that's a dedicated event done annually, once a year in New York State, usually in April. They dedicate a weekend that all the fire departments are encouraged to get the recruitment message out and open their doors and put on displays and invite the public in one weekend a year. Of course, you should be doing it as more if possible, but it's a unified New York attempt to have everyone do it together on the same weekend, and it's been very successful. There's a lot of success stories with that. So community engagement is so important. Getting the message out that we need members, communicating with our members about this need. You know, that's the other thing, folks. Let's not forget, the studies still show the very best recruitment method there is. We could throw a lot of money, a lot of signs, a lot of billboards, and a lot of effort at recruiting new members. The number one way to still recruit new members is word of mouth. Think about that. If every one of your members in your department back home brought in one new member, what would that do for your membership?
And we've seen that just this year. If you take a look at where our duty shift program has come, how far it's come in the 1 year that we've been working on it, and it is still a work in progress. It will always be a work in progress. But one of the things that we're seeing as new members are coming in or potential members are coming in and will say, how did you hear about us? Why are you choosing us? I spoke to so-and-so. So-and-so knows so-and-so who said, hey, you really should go see Snyder. We have 19 onboarded so far
18.
This year. 18?
18 since
18
January.
onboarded so far this year, and I would say half of those were through I know somebody who said something to me, or, hey, my friend over here joined. It's a great program. He was telling me all about it. Here I am.
So let's get into the duty shift program. As I mentioned, it's just one facet of an overall recruitment effort. Out of the discussions that you had, out of your committee meetings, came this idea to try and implement a duty shift program. And for just the benefit of our listeners, for 100 plus years, it was actually the 1940s to be exact, is when Snyder started going with a percentage-based system. In other words, when you joined, by and large, you had to meet a minimum number of calls and training drills, a certain percentage of calls and training drills for your yearly quota to remain in good standing. And that's basically the way it's been since the 1940s. Well, our committee, among other things they discussed, said, hey, we should talk about some other ideas here to hold our members accountable. We want them to still be involved, but is there another way to attract members that maybe meeting a certain percentage of calls doesn't work for? And Chief Hudson, I know you can speak well on that program and the efforts that went into it.
I think the biggest thing was it was an effort that involved a lot of different pieces. When we got together and really started looking at this and saying, hey, there's this thing, people are trying it, it's a duty shift program, we went out and researched who's doing it, who's tried it, who's successful with it, who isn't or who hasn't been. And we reached out to a dozen or so different fire companies, districts, departments, and we had long conversations with either the chief of the department or the president or somebody who was intimately involved with the program. And they were very candid. The ones that had it working very well were very candid about, this is what worked for us, here were some pitfalls, here's how long it's taken us. And there were some departments that were very candid about, yeah, we've tried it and it's a complete and total disaster. And then we would follow that up, why? And I think that was the biggest question that we asked, why? Why was it working? Why wasn't it working? What would you have done different given the situation that you had? We took those pieces and started to craft our own program, and I think that's a key to this whole thing. There isn't a cookie cutter program for this. You really have to take a look at what will work best for your department, your situation, your demographics, your call volume. And that's a real key to that. And as we began to craft that based on the input, Chief Fildes was incredibly helpful with his law and legal background, researching what could we do and what couldn't we do, what were some of the statutes that some other departments we spoke to didn't have to follow, but we would need to, so we had to incorporate that. So really it was a lot of moving pieces, and it was a lot of companies and people who took a lot of time with us and helped us out. Chief Paul Hildreth out at
Fayetteville.
thank you, God, at Fayetteville, New York, spent an inordinate amount of time with us. They have an incredibly successful program out there. And he was just a terrific resource and asset, and always willing to help, whether it was electronically or voice. And we went back and forth to him a few times. So we've directed other people who have come to speak to us to Chief Hildreth out there. They have a great program, one that we hope we can get to very similar someday. They have different circumstance, different call volume, different issues. But again, it comes back to what will work best for us, or what do we feel will work best for us. Once we started crafting the program, we began taking it to our Board of Fire Commissioners, who were open to trying new things. They realized that, yeah, we do have some issues coming down in the future. Let's take a look at this. They had their concerns, rightly so. We discussed with our executive president, vice president. They had their input. We discussed with the fire officers. They had their input. So it was really an entire effort among not just internally, but externally, and that's where it snowballed from there.
Excellent. And I know as I've talked to some departments, there are departments out there, listeners, that are doing duty shift or hours program 24/7. 24/7. Seen other departments doing similar programs to what we're doing, seen some doing half days. It's all about, like the chief said, discussing what works for your area. Obviously, in lower call volume areas, that could be a challenge because maybe they don't get that type of call volume to keep the members interested in staying at the firehouse. But I'm sure there's creative ways to come up with to help alleviate that. Or obviously rural areas might have a difficult time, but it's worked for us so far. And out of all these meetings, all of these ideas, going to the various boards, administrative, as well as your line officers and then the Board of Fire Commissioners, our program came out. And Trish, in a nutshell, do you want to explain just what came out of our program and what we hold our members accountable for? Again, for 80, 90 years, almost 100 now, it was a percentage based. You had to make, it was 30% for years, and it was lowered to 25% of call volume plus drill requirements. Here's a new category, brand new as of January 1st, 2022. What did you guys and gals massage out of all these meetings, and how is our program set up now?
Yeah, sure. Our program, we really wanted to make sure the duty shift members and the percent or on-call members had an equal program. So we didn't want to give one more benefit over the other, and that was our basic driver when we were creating the new program. That was very important because we don't want any one member feeling like somebody else is, having to do less or more than the other. Then we took the approach, to make it as quantitative as possible based on fact and data. So we got a little nerded out on the data. We downloaded all of our calls. The average amount of minutes we're on every call. We dropped out the highs and lows, just like you do in statistical analysis, ended up with the median point. We realized that what we were looking at was equal to our 25% requirement, like you said, was 288 hours of service a year. There's a possibility somebody could work their 288 hours and never see a call. It's just the way the calls drop. But if you think about a 25% member looking at the average amount of time they spend on those 25% of calls, it comes out to about 288 hours a year, which averages to 24 hours a month. It's pretty reasonable and easy to attain. We have a lot of duty ship members that do far more than that, just like we have percentage members that do far more than the minimum. They really like it because it gives them the opportunity to manage their work-life balance. We have guys that work nights, so they come up here during the day and they do their duty shift hours. We have guys that work days, so they sleep here overnight. They're getting pretty creative about their sleeping arrangements.
Yes, we do not have a bunk room as of yet. As a fire commissioner, I'm waiting for that request.
Yep.
Can we put on a second floor?
Yep.
Only with a pole.
So again, everything we were trying to do was to make both programs equal. And it seems to be working out. We had 11 percentage members that shifted over to duty shift.
Oh, so you gave them the opportunity. If a percentage member wanted to switch over, that was allowed.
Yep, that was allowed. And that was mostly people who either had challenging work environment, or a lot of them have very young children. And so it worked for them. And then we onboarded 18 new members. So we've had some very good success with it.
Say that's a good success rate.
Yeah.
And then for the new members coming in, the requirements are exactly the same as new members in the percentage program. So, our requirements are firefighter 1 within the first year, EMT by the end of the second year, all drills and work details, firematic drills, EMS drills, and work details remain the same. So there is no difference.
So just for our listeners to understand, in addition to the hours that they're required, they need to also meet training requirements. That's not included in those hours. They need to meet their training requirements and other miscellaneous details that we have.
That's right. So basically the requirements between each of the two programs are identical, except for one is hours and one is percent.
Excellent. Chief Hudson, do you have something?
Yeah, now I just wanted to go back to what I said, where when you're looking at this, you really have to tailor it for what will work best for your department. And when we looked at those hours, as Trish had said, one of the things that we really talked about is how are we going to roll in the training hours. There were several companies out there that it's not 288 hours a year, it's 550 or 600 hours a year. But they roll in all their training, all their work details. Every single time somebody steps in, they're getting credit for that time. We didn't want to look at it that way. We wanted to break it down as much as we could in order to, as Trish said, and we spent a lot of time talking about, keep it as similar as possible no matter which program you were in. That way, we just backed out for pure response, and that's where those hours came from.
This is so important to keep an open mind, too. Like I said, I know there's some naysayers out there, and obviously there's companies every company's got their own logistical issues they need to deal with and their own obstacles. Here's an idea that was thrown out to me as I went around, I forget where, I think I was in either Tennessee or Louisiana, and someone came up to me at a break at a conference I was at to talk about, they do an hours program, however, they're very rural. So what they do is hours from home. In other words, listeners, our program is you're doing the hours at the firehouse. Our members come in and stay at the firehouse for 2, 4, 6, 8 hours, whatever works for them for that day. There's other departments that have said, okay, we're very rural, we don't get a lot of call volume, or maybe they do get call volume, but they're allowing their members to clock in from home. They are committing to being available. The chief or officers see that because they use a software that allows these members to log in. They know right away they have a crew that's going to get to the firehouse and get at least one of the rigs out. Overnight, they know they're going to we all have trouble getting people out of bed at night. These people are committing that they will go to calls if a call comes in. And if it doesn't, oh well, they made themselves available. Candace McDonald, who is an expert on recruitment and retention, those of you probably as listeners have seen her or read her articles, presents at FDIC every year, she said it so well once. Why should we penalize a member who is coaching their son or daughter's little league team and takes them on a trip? Or why should we penalize a member who chooses to go to their son or daughter's concert or play or musical at school and happens to miss a bunch of calls because of that? This gives them the opportunity to volunteer when they're available. Not a bad idea. It involves what? Keeping an open mind, does it not? What in your talks with these other departments, was there anything you can tell the listeners that you definitely learned to avoid? Any major pitfalls, problem areas? Let's be honest, it's not all roses, correct? Nope. There's going to be, so I don't know if you could identify some of those ahead of time for anyone that might be interested. Who wants to take that one? You're all looking at each other.
There were some pitfalls, but again, you have to take those comments in the context of the success or failure or perceived success or perceived failure of the company's program. We have one company that had turned over control of their duty shift program to the executive side, and the firematic side completely lost control of it. And there was apparently there's a rift in the company between the executive side, who, this is all conversation, who doesn't know what's going on, and the fire side, who does know what's going on.
There's that communication factor
but
again.
There's some of those issues. Tracking was a big potential pitfall. How are you going to track hours? How are you going to make sure people are really up there? How are you going to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do? And again, Trish and Zach really came through. Trish took the lead on that and pulled Zach into it, but took the lead on really figuring out how we would use our operating system to the best of its capability to track what we're doing. And again, it really comes down to what challenge is that department facing with their program, and how specific is it to them? We all have a lot of the same things, but the solutions are all going to be different.
And 18 new members, duty shift program specific within the first 8, 9, 10 months. That says a lot right there.
We have been averaging 2 new members a year for nine or 10 years. As far as we went back, and now we're at 18 in the first 10 months.
And Captain Polvino, you're snickering over here.
I think it's kind of funny because we talked. I think one of the very first things that we talked about when we kind of first got together, this whole idea back in late 2019, was we're not getting new members, right? And then kind of going back to that, like, we would go months without bringing in anybody, and the secretary would read, any new applications? No. And it was like, well, what's going on? So where are we missing it here? Is it the messaging? Is it what? So that kind of, I think, kicked a lot of that off. Now, I will say, I don't think I anticipated our program being successful. I don't think I anticipated 18 new people.
Which brings up a whole nother level of challenges, from outfitting them and making sure they got. I think we ran out of minuters.
So turnout gear.
One of my tasks on the firemanic side of things is PPE, the personal protective equipment. So the turnout gear, all that entails with that, and that onboarding program. So one of the things that's really nice is when you have somebody that comes into Snyder or comes into your fire department that has experience elsewhere, it's a lot easier giving them turnout gear because they know what's going on with it, right? So we had a member come in, been around the block a few times, past chief in one of his other departments, and I'm like, I really don't have to explain what turnout gear is to you, right? And he's like, yeah, no, I know it. Versus, you spend a lot more time with somebody, a newer member who's brand new off the street, explaining how the gear works, what it protects them against, what it's for, all that kind of stuff. But one of the challenges was with 18 new members, my gear room is looking pretty sparse, which is comparative to 3 years ago when we lost a number of members due to life circumstances, and I was almost running out of space to store turnout gear. So it's a good problem to have. Every month, I think, I have a new request to the Board of Commissioners. Hey, I need to buy this. I need to buy more gloves. I need to buy more hoods because we need to keep, our members protected, part of the whole professionalism aspect of it. But obviously, when you have members coming in to our fire company that have previous experience, we want to get them on the line right away. I can tell you, we ran a car fire yesterday, and 2 of the guys on the crew were brand new to Snyder within the past year. Right, and they worked hand in glove with our operation. They knew what they were doing. We pulled the hand line, got water on the car fire, and they knew exactly what to do. I could say, hey, I need this done. Okay, got it, no problem. So having that experience come in has been insanely beneficial, I think, to our residents, which we all took that oath to swear to protect. But then as an officer, it's been easy at drills because I've got guys that have a baseline understanding, and we can build them up into our SOGs, and then we take the newer members and we pair them up, and I think we'll get to some of that, talk about the mentoring stuff, but we can pair them up with an experienced member, especially an experienced member with some background in our SOGs, and put them into that program to build up those skills, and then it's kind of get everybody moving in that right direction.
So our hours program, just one part of an overall effort. And just like to take a minute, remind the listeners that they're listening to Fire Engineering Talk Radio and the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. Tom Merrill here. So glad to have you listening in. And joining me are members from my department's Recruitment and Retention Committee. We're talking about our efforts here in my hometown department. Specifically just now about our new hours-based program or duty shift program, but also a lot of other ideas. And I'm glad to have past Chief Files, Secretary Hudson, Assistant Chief Hudson, and Captain Polvino here with me tonight talking about this. So we brought in 18 new members. We've brought in other members that have switched from our percentage program to the hours-based program. We have quite a mix. And I know listeners might be thinking, okay, are you just getting new members with experience and letting them go rampant to calls? No, there's another part to this that involves starting off with meeting prospective members before we even accept them, understanding where they come from, their background. One concern I have, and I'll be very blunt, and Chief knows this as the committee, one of the concerns I did have, I should say, is to use my line, I didn't want to become a place people could just run to if they were experiencing problems at their other department. I'll just quit A and go to Snyder, or I'll quit B and go to Snyder. We didn't want that. So this committee did a fantastic job of coming up with an orientation. Well, first off, a meeting program where they meet prospective members, an orientation program, a mentoring program. Again, it's a lot of little parts that go into this to make it an overall successful effort. So let's launch into that now and talk about, okay, I knock on the door, I'm interested in joining. What if I don't even know about the two programs? How does that process work? Who would like to talk about that? Trish?
I guess I'll start. We actually, one of the things we didn't talk about yet today is that in 2019 we rewrote our bylaws, our company bylaws cover to cover. And when we did that, we really zeroed in on the roles and responsibilities of each of the committees. And we have a committee called an examining board. I guess they're a standing committee. And we also, between Zach and I, revamped some of the information that's on our website. So when a prospective member goes to our website, they can fill out an information form. That generates an email to the committee. Brent is then the first response back to that person where they can ask questions
which right there, if I could just say, well, it's on my mind. Another thing that's pointed out a lot of times in recruitment and retention lectures, seminars, podcasts is one area that is identified as needing to be improved in a lot of departments is keeping websites and other areas kept up to date. And somebody has to monitor that. Heard horror stories from people trying to join departments where the website is so outdated, the chief's not chief anymore, emails, links broken, things like that. So it's an area to go back at home and make sure that you have somebody monitoring this so we can, act on it in a timely manner, too. You'll lose people that are interested if you don't get back to them quickly. We
actually brought in a member who attempted to join the department of the town of which he lives, and he made multiple attempts to get a hold of them and never got a response from anybody after multiple attempts, and then came to Snyder and couldn't believe how professional the program was. So basically what happens is they can fill out that information form, or they can, all the information on the programs is there, they can download an application and fill it out. There's instructions on how to send it in. Once they do that, that application gets processed and they're invited into the examining board meeting. Behind the scenes, the examining board does a background check as well as a reference check. So, we haven't taken in everybody. There are people that we have not brought on for one reason or another. I won't get into those. But we
vet them. We do. Because we don't want to just take anybody, and we're not and we don't want to steal members either.
Correct.
If you had somebody come from another department, especially a close by one, I'm sure that this committee is asking, why are you leaving? Chief Files?
Yeah, I was just going to add that's one of the questions that comes up directly during the examining board meeting is point blank, why aren't you joining your home department or the department area you live in? And then we look for the answers to that. Sometimes that gives us a clue as to what their motivations are, and it's just an opportunity to make sure that we're not getting a member that says, well, I didn't know I had a department that I could join, because we don't want to again, as you said, we're not stealing members at all.
Right.
That's how we found out about the person who tried to join a neighboring company and couldn't. But John is on the examining board, so they do the vetting process, goes through the examining board. If it passes through the examining board, it moves on to our board of fire commissioners. They then meet with the prospective member. If it passes through there, they get a physical, and then they are brought in for their orientation. And the orientation program has changed significantly.
We're not just throwing gear at them and saying, start going to calls,
not
right?
anymore.
That ship has sailed, hasn't it?
Yeah, not anymore.
That's
So
what we did, Chief Files, right?
See you at the call.
Well, that it worked for us.
we've actually broken that orientation program into six different, eight modules.
Depending on your experience.
Depending on your experience, and each new recruit, whether they're duty shift or on-call member, receives a mentor as well. So that's another member within the organization. But you could probably...
Big buzzword in the fire service, volunteer fire service, mentor. You hear a lot of articles about it, a lot of success stories, also some hiccups along the way. One of the big challenges is mentors aren't always around when the member that's new is around, or vice versa. So, Chief Hudson, what are we doing on the mentor side?
We drafted the program. Well, we put it together. We realized, well, let me take a step back, because the onboarding program really drove the mentor program. One of the questions that came out of our meetings with the district was, one of the comments I should say is, we don't need untrained people sitting around the firehouse. It's not going to do us any good. So we went back and we developed an onboarding program that produces an fully functional exterior firefighter inside of 6 modules. And those modules can be done as quickly or as slowly as you want, as long as they're done within 6 weeks. 6 of those modules will get you up and running. The last 2 modules are the New York State Firefighter 1 skill sheet. So if you come in without Firefighter 1 or no other experience, you have 8 modules. But the first 6, no matter who you are, whatever experience you have, you're going to go through those so you understand where our equipment is, what roles, how we do things here. If we call for something as simple as if we call for ventilation, we've learned that some members' idea of ventilation is much different than other firefighters, because it depends on what their company's SOGs are. As we were going through that, one of the challenges with the onboarding has traditionally been left to 1 or 2 officers. The responsibility for the initial orientation and onboarding has always fallen to the first assistant chief, with a backup from the second assistant chief. And then any other type of training generally fell to one of the officers. We realized that, hoping initially as this all came about, we were going to be putting too much extra burden on the officers. So we opened it up to a lot of people. We put together a mentor program. It's not difficult. It's not intricate. It's simply, you are going to give the new candidate, the new member, a point of reference and help them along the way, answer their questions, but also not necessarily do the training for the modules, but help them arrange the training. They don't know who to go to. They don't know who the best person to give them the orientation on the rescue is, or who's the best person to talk to them about power tools. So, but that mentor is. So we have developed that. We developed that part of the program and melded it right into the onboarding. So the very first orientation for the new member, the mentor is there. They meet, they exchange contact information, and the mentor starts following the new member through his orientation or her orientation. We have a sheet that's laid out that you basically check off an initial, and as they work through everything, it doesn't have to be done in any specific order, but all the tasks are there, and you start working them through. And again, the key to that is the mentor doesn't have to do all the training. They don't have to be there every step of the way. But what they do need to do is provide that advice or provide that direction to the new member, saying, here's who you want to talk to get this done. Here's who you want to really listen to. If they're talking about something, they're the ones that do it. And that's the key to this.
So it's been quite a process from when you first sat down and had your first meetings via the computer, Zoom, or whatever you used, to where we are today. What would you say are the challenges? I mean, it's always being tweaked. It's always going to be modified. What do you identify for anyone considering this as being one of the toughest challenges to overcome?
If I can add,
Absolutely.
basically firefighters are only against two things, and that's the way things are and change.
Quoting Alan Brunacini, of course.
Wonderful man. But that if you begin at that level, then you can kind of anticipate where you need to go. And Trish brought up an interesting point of communication within the department. None of these programs, none of these changes can be successful without the buy-in of the members, the organization itself. You're always going to have naysayers. You're always going to have disbelievers. But I think the majority of the members are honest enough to look at the whole situation that you're facing and understand that things do have to change or be adjusted. And so long as those changes are equal, as we've made painstakingly efforts to ensure that both programs are equal, that will allow you to progress. So the buy-in of the membership is probably the heart and soul.
I think along with to get the buy-in, it took a lot of communication, a lot of transparency, and I think there was at no point in time did we have, whether it was our company meeting or on a monthly basis or the monthly fire district meeting, where there wasn't somebody from our committee present, not only present, but also up in front and talking about it. So at the committee reports, from the company meeting side, we were always up front talking about what was going on, and we weren't keeping anything a secret. Some of the details we may have been working on behind, closed doors and kept, that until we were ready to roll out. But by and large, everything was up front. So we kind of jokingly said it was the worst kept secret in the firehouse was that we were working on this program.
Then it really shouldn't even be a secret.
No,
right?
but I think I think it was kind of our joke, within ourselves, right? And I think the chief, being a chief officer, being at the district meetings, was our point person to talk with the fire commissioners and to say, give regular updates in those meetings of what was going on.
Right.
And I think keeping everybody informed internally led to a lot of success. And then, being able to roll this out, Trish mentioned it, been on our Facebook, our social media pages, but on our website, being able to communicate the program externally and cohesively, but also have some consistency with, again, imagery and messaging and the same messaging. Why reinvent the wheel? Why type things 3 times when you can copy and paste it from one platform to another? Helped with the overall rollout.
And I think we should point out, too, that one thing that we've done at Snyder is we want these duty shift members, if I can focus on that just for a second, to come around if possible, not just for their duty hours. So the department is to be recognized, the administrative side, the president, especially our vice president, Chris Utz, to be recognized for supporting activities that are bringing people up. We have a monthly cornhole gathering to play games in the firehouse, and some other ideas to bring people together. And obviously it's one department. Our Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres have one motto. It's called One Buffalo. I like to think of it as One Snyder. We're all in this together. So even though our hours program members only serve whatever hours they are that month, they're still invited up to the firehouse 24/7, 365.
One of the pitfalls, or one of the cautions, or one of the successes, I think it all rolls into one thing. I think that if you are going to implement or roll something out like this, you have to be incredibly direct and upfront with the candidates that are coming in. In our examining board, I have been accused of being a little too straightforward and a little too upfront and direct. But to me, that's very crucial. We tell that new person right up front, and you alluded to it yourself, Commissioner, about how you were concerned. People were going to have problems and then leave their department and just come to Snyder. We were very upfront with people, saying, if you come here, if you are a troublemaker, if you have problems at your other house and you're bringing them here, we will get rid of you. You are not going to come in and ruin this program that we've worked very hard for 2 years to put in place and that a lot of people depend on to remain members. We're not going to send letters. We're not going to counsel you. We're not going to do anything like that. We'll simply pull you in front of this examining board and remove you from the department. And we made that very clear. And that's a difficult conversation to have with somebody you just met. But actually, it got easier as a couple of them went, as we went on. But it's important, and it's important to set that level of expectation for a new program that everybody was watching. And as Chief Files said, I'll say it a little differently. He said naysayers. I'll say we have people who were dead set against this program and people that were just waiting for it to fail. We were not going to let that happen, either by our own failures, not thinking something through or not implementing correctly, or bringing in the wrong type of person who was going to create an issue or give the program a bad name, or even worse, give our company a bad name.
It's just it's just an incredible effort, and you're to be recognized for that, as well as the whole department for being, we're all in this together. And Chief Files, what you said about firefighters hating two things, changing the way things are. The great Alan Brunacini said that. It reminds me of a class I sat in. I was fortunate to sit in on several of his classes, and he was just such an iconic figure in the fire service. He talked about change, and he talked about when he joined the Phoenix Fire Department in the 1950s, one of the chief officers became a firefighter when there were still horses, and every day complained about the motorized fire apparatus. And when a truck inevitably broke down or had a mechanical problem, that chief was in the background going, "See, I told you. So I think that just sums it up so well.
That's
but
hilarious.
My question is, what do we have to lose? What do we have to lose by trying new ideas? Folks, the fire service of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, fantastic. Did incredible things, had incredible people. They accomplished so much. They've brought us to where we are today. We cannot let that stop us from considering new ideas to proceed forward, because today's fire service can be just as great. So an incredible collaborative effort between committees, between our department, between branches of our department. It's not all roses. It all hasn't been easy, but the results are there. 18 new members. And I can say that small car fire yesterday, but as the one who helped dispatch that car fire, came in at the time of day that inevitably most volunteer departments hurt for membership. I think it was 10, 11 a.m., 10 a.m. in that time frame. And two of the members on the line, duty shift new members, trained members, not just, oh, you're a duty shift member, here's your gear, you can start going to calls. Thoroughly onboarded, mentored, and brought up to speed, where they contributed to that successful operation yesterday.
The call actually came in right before our meeting was supposed to start.
Your regular
Yep.
10 o'clock every Monday.
Okay.
I came in right before that meeting, and we all went flying out for it.
Trish, what would you say if there's other departments out there that are considering it? Any advice?
I would say, look at the needs of your department and look at what you can bring, whether it's duty shift or a new orientation program or a mentorship program. But whatever you're doing, do some research and then develop a program that works for your department. Again, we didn't implement somebody else's program. We implemented one that we felt best matched our needs. And doing that, we were very fact-based and data-driven. And I would say there's a lot of research materials out there. There's a lot of people willing to talk to people. We are. We're willing to talk to anybody who wants to talk to us. But I think that's the biggest takeaway that I would say that we had, is developing a program that works for us. It's not somebody else's program. It's, we took pieces of other people's programs and learnings and molded it into a program for us.
Chief Files, any last words of advice? Or
I guess we're very happy with the program as it's going, and we're going to keep an eye and make sure it's doing what we want and continues to do what we want. But we enjoyed standing on the shoulders of other departments. The information that was shared with us from other departments was refreshingly honest and candid. And to me, if in the fire service we have that available, we can meet any challenge that's forthcoming.
Excellent. Captain Polvino. What would you tell people out there?
I think the biggest thing I would say is that it takes time. It takes, you have to be willing to put in the time and the effort and the work to do it. Change, I think, as we all know, is not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, and I don't think it should happen overnight, because I think that's where you throw things at people and they're not ready for it. I think by building in that time factor, you can help prep the company, the organization as a whole, for what you're going to do and what you're planning on. And if you tell people up front, this is what I'm planning on, they have no excuse for not knowing. So that would be my suggestions.
Chief Hudson is the highest ranking figure in the room. I'll leave you with the last words about the Snyder Fire Department's recruitment and retention efforts, and to others who are listening thinking they have to do something, and what you might want to tell them.
Thank you. I would say, first off, surround yourself with the right people. I am incredibly lucky to have a number of talented, gifted, and dedicated people that I work with here. So that is the number one thing. And as you have heard through this whole thing, you can't do this alone. We have the buy-in of a lot of people, but that buy-in didn't just come by saying, hey, here's our program, it's going to work. So you really need to have those people with you and sharing the same idea and vision for what the program can be. The other piece of that is making sure that your expectations are set and communicated. Communication is one of the huge pieces that have come out of this conversation today, but those expectations have to be there. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we going to do it? And how is it going to look, not just now, but in the future? And I think when you are able to set those expectations, then there isn't any confusion as to, well, you said you were going to do this, or we thought we were getting this, or you told us something that wasn't true or accurate. And that's the one thing that we want to do, that we want to continue to do. And those expectations have to go to the people that you're bringing in. As I had said previously, you have to make sure they understand your expectations for them to be a member of your department.
And it's not easy. It's not all as simple. You have to roll your sleeves up. You have to get to work. You have to work as a team. And this started with a small team here at Snyder getting together, saying, what can we do? Started having regular meetings, surveyed the department membership to kind of gauge their feelings about, hey, how are we doing? What can we do better? Communicated their findings, communicated their ideas, maintained open, transparent communication with the membership and other parties and entities involved in this department, which is so very important. Took advantage and continues to take advantage of community events and activities to get our name out there, to brand us as a professional department, to engage with the community, let them know we're looking for members, hosting events at the firehouse, going out to events, having them come here as well as going out. So important. And then just what can we be doing better as an organization? Came up with the duty shift idea. There's a lot of other ideas out there. Been at departments that have childcare for membership so they can go to calls and training. I've been at departments that do the sign-in from home. Been to departments that offer different membership categories. We've talked about that on the show before. There's no limit to what we can do to keep our wonderful volunteer fire service moving forward. And of course, as Chief Hudson kept talking about, communicate, establish those expectations, let the members know that this is how we're going to do it here. This is what you need to do to be successful. And one thing I did just think of for my parting words of wisdom for anyone considering this, when it launched, we had a lot of new ideas that came up, a lot of changes that wanted to be implemented, and it got to the point where sometimes we're making changes to our program every month. We decided to take a step back, still discuss changes, but adopt them once a year, effective the first of the year, rather than changing everything every month. And that worked out. It seemed to work out well for us. We got several changes going through on the 1st of 2023. If somebody wanted to reach out to a member of the committee, I don't want to give everyone's email address. Who would you like them to reach out to? Chief Hudson, can you give your contact information for anyone that maybe would be looking for more information?
Email us at bhudson, B as in Bravo, HUDSON, @snyderfd.com.
Very good. I can't thank all of you enough for taking the time to be on the show. The first time I've had a group of Snyder firefighters on a regular show of mine. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about the program. I'm excited to see it be successful, continue to be successful. And because of the amount of emails and phone calls we've taken, we thought, from all over the country too, we thought it would be good to do a show on our program. It works for us. See what works for you. And folks, as I wrap up tonight, as I do every single year as we approach the holiday season, I just want to remind you all, be careful. December is an historically tragic month in the annals of the fire service. It should be a festive-filled month where we're with our families and loved ones, but it is also, we just need to be cognizant, December is a very, very tragic month. Probably the most tragic month in the history of our fire service continues to be the month of December. And I say this not to be a downer, but just to pay respects to those who have paid the supreme sacrifice, because as long as we speak their names, they will never be forgotten. And as professional firefighters, we owe it to those who served before and sacrificed, in some cases, everything they have for their communities. So as we close, please take the time to remember and review the tragic holiday fires, the Coconut Grove Fire, late November 1942, Our Lady of Angels Fire in December of 1958, the Union Stockyard Fire in Chicago in 1910, Keokuk, Iowa, in December of 1999, just 3 weeks after the deadly Worcestershire Fire in Massachusetts. I could go on and on and on. Close to home, West Webster, New York, Christmas Eve, several years ago, where 2 firefighters were killed in the line of duty and 2 others were horribly wounded. Buffalo, New York, a couple days after Christmas in 1983, when 5 Buffalo firefighters were killed. All of these are stark reminders of the service that we provide and how dangerous it is. They serve as very powerful reminders, the very real reminders of the unpredictability of this job. And again, by reading about these fires and the firefighters' sacrifices, we're honoring those who passed. And we also can help protect a whole new generation of firefighters, because those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Thanks again for listening in. If anybody wants to reach out to me, my contact information is tamerrill63@aol.com. As always, thank you to Chief Bobby Halton, my fire engineering family, and everyone at Clarion Events for supporting my podcast and all the other podcasts that are on fire engineering. Thanks for joining in. My next show will be, I can't believe I'm going to say it, in 2023. But I promise to again be talking about important topics involving our volunteer fire service. So thank you for listening in, and remember, true professionalism is not defined by any paycheck. And folks, it's soon to be 2023. Our residents are owed professional service delivered by professional firefighters representing professional organizations. Take care, folks.